In today's show, I'm going to be talking to you about some puppy training 101. And you may have noticed this already with your dogs at home. Maybe you have a puppy in training. Maybe you are working with, a dog who's just starting to really get the hang of things. And you may notice that with the seasons changing, now wherever you are all over the world, your seasons are likely starting to change. I know here in North America, it is, we're starting to see some grass. We're starting to see the signs of spring. And I've actually had some people tell me that they found for the first time in a long time that their dog didn't have a super snappy turn when they called them. So today we are going to talk about some straightforward puppy training. And this is something that happens to lots of different people. So I don't want you to feel like you are alone here. This is something that dogs go through when the seasons change. And you'll notice today, unfortunately, my beautiful co-host is nowhere to be found. She's actually kind of on vacation right now. She's in Florida. But my co-host for today is this little fluff ball. Hippie, hippie, shake. Maybe Hippie will want to go on my shoulder. You want to go up there, buddy? And just, I don't know. We'll see how well this works for the course of the show. I see lots of people jumping in. I see Daryl, Lamb Chop, Bob Ross, Lost Bob. I see the man, the moderator, Dan Luton. I see Jay Harmon. Daryl Bambick says, "Spring, you don't live in Montreal, Quebec." I know, and you know what's funny is, just before I came down here, I was watching some news, and I noticed that it looks like the Midwest of the U.S. is getting just absolutely swamped with a huge snowstorm. I guess it's, quite remarkable. So even with that said, if you've had some green grass and now you've got snow, I mean, this happens at all the different season changes. So I'm going to tell you about some things that you need to look at to really focus on when you start to have these environmental changes. I actually see someone that's jumped into the chat that I don't often see on the show, and I want to bring that comment. There's Kale. Kale is on her McCann Dogs Agility account, and she is jumping in here into the show. Now, I see that the pre-show is over, so why don't we get down to training? Now, there's a lot going on here. It's just me and the dogs. You'll probably hear me singing "One is the Loneliest Number." There's a lot to do. So maybe I could get a little help, because I would love a little bit of help from you guys in our opening. So today we're going to be talking about some things that you need to focus on as the seasons are changing. And finish this sentence for me. I'm Ken Steep. If you didn't say it, I bet you were thinking it. Welcome back to McCann Dogs. So as we roll along here, there's going to be lots of opportunities to ask questions. If this is your first time here, my name is Ken Steep. I'm a professional dog trainer. We get to help more than 500 dogs every single week at our training facility. And I want to, I really try to take advantage of these opportunities to talk with you at home, because I want to see what kind of questions you have, what kind of things, I'd be able to answer during these live streams. Now, we get to publish 2 times almost every single week. We have, come on up, buddy. We have a pre-recorded show, or pre-recorded video, usually on Mondays, and then on Thursdays, it's the train station live stream. And if this is your first time on the train station, I want to welcome you aboard, and I'll never get tired of making that noise and saying that line. I see lots of people jumping in to our chat. I want to welcome everybody that's here: Chucky, Diana, Mary, and everybody that is hanging out with us here. Now, let's talk about some of the things that you really need to be aware of as the seasons change. Now, especially for those of you who have a young puppy. Actually, I've got a question of the week that I'd like to share with you. With the seasons changing, have you noticed a difference in your dog's listening abilities? Now, this is especially true for those of you who have a puppy at home. Maybe you've got a puppy that's so young they've never seen the green grass. They've never seen all of these spring things. I've actually noticed our little beeline. When I take her out, she's investigating. We have lots of animals where we are. There's like bunnies and skunks and all sorts of foxes, all sorts of things. And I know where the bunnies like to hang out, and I know the paths they travel. And now that the snow's starting to melt here where we are, Beeline's pretty interested in some of those, like the bunny poop that's left behind, and following where some of the bunnies were And you might be able to see over my shoulder, Hippie Shake is investigating the toy bin. And there's probably lots of great toys in there for her to check out. So you'll probably see her in behind me for the better part of the show as she's investigating that toy bin. It's hard because there's nobody else to look after her, so I have to sort of keep my eye on her the whole time. But so I see some people that are making some great comments here. Cheyenne says, I'm about to get 6-week-old puppies. Yeah, so these puppies will have never experienced these changing conditions, right? I love seeing these. Chucky Rendon says, toot toot. Erica Vona 24 says, choo choo. Yeah, welcome to the train station, guys. I'm glad you could join us. Yeah, lots of interesting comments coming in to the chat. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about what you need to do to prepare yourself for the changing conditions again. And I know if you're in Montreal, Quebec, maybe it's not quite, doesn't feel like springtime yet, but it will. And I want you to be ready for that. So when we talk about introducing your dog to these new environments, dogs don't make generalizations like people do. I like the idea. One of our trainers explained it this way. You know, if you jump in a car, you learn to drive a little 2-door car that's stick shift, and then you can jump in a pickup truck or a much bigger vehicle and sort of figure it out. You know, you can sort of remember how to drive a standard vehicle. Dogs don't make those broad generalizations like we do, so a lot of these new experiences are can be overwhelming. You know, they can really be confusing and challenging for some dogs. So we need to I want you at home to think like a dog trainer when you encounter new environments, when you encounter these changing seasons. There's lots of new things that your dogs are going to encounter. Might be the grass. Maybe it's like a location that you've never gone before because you haven't been able to. You haven't been able to go, to the back of the park because there was just so much snow. Maybe kids on bikes. That's motion, especially, is a pretty common one that some dogs struggle with. I know in our grade 1 classes at our hall, sometimes during stays, I'll bring out a skateboard and I'll just roll the skateboard around. And not that they are surprised to see specifically a skateboard, but something on the ground that rolls. It's just a new experience for them, and we help the dogs to be successful through that. So a lot of these things, you just don't know what your dog's response is going to be. And as you know, being a puppy owner or a young dog owner, they can be pretty inquisitive. So we want to think like a dog trainer. We want to set them up to be successful. And one of the important things that you need to do is to, if you've reached a point where your dog has a decent response to name, or they've been really responsive, even off leash. If you feel like you're at a point where you're off leash, now might be the time to put the training wheels back on. Now might be the time to attach a long line. We talk a lot about long lines and how you can help your dog to be successful. You can allow your dog to experience some really challenging things, but still have control if they make the mistakes. You can train through those things. As you use things, I actually put a long line, I think, in the description below. I believe, so that in case you're at home thinking like, wow, that's a great idea. I didn't even think of using a long line so that I had more control. I think there's one. I just grabbed one off of our Amazon affiliate account that you can check out, or go to your local pet store and get a long line, especially as you're giving your dog more opportunities to be off leash in these big wide open spaces. We want to help them to be right. So as you're using things like a long line, or as you're making sure that you can help your dog to be successful, you need to do it gradually. We talk a little bit about this when we talk about off-leash freedom. You don't want to just all of a sudden remove the line. You don't want to take the long line all the way off, take the leash all the way off. It's just a little bit too much. And it doesn't allow you to work through some of these challenges that you really want to expose your dog to. I can hear her. Look at her. We caught her. We caught her in the act. I knew I could hear something. Hippie Shake, what are you doing, buddy? She thought she was going to sneak a toy, but little does she know, I can see her out of the corner of my eye on camera. Hi, buddy. You want to sit down over here for a second? So something that's great about a long line, and especially the one, I'm sure the link that I provided in the description below, or the one that you get when you go to your pet store, just get a cheap one. It doesn't have to be anything expensive and fancy. You want to actually cut it down. You want to start at, let's say, 20 feet so that you have some control at a distance. And then you can cut it down to 15. If you're successful at 15, your dog's making great choices. Now you can cut it down to 12. You know, you really, you're making it a little bit more challenging bit by bit by bit, but you still have control. So don't forget to use those training wheels. Now, I mentioned a little bit earlier that I'll be answering your questions. And normally what we do here on the train station, if this is your first time, actually, you know what? Something that I like to ask, and I didn't this time, is where are you guys watching from? I know I saw someone from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, which is cool. I'd love to know where you're watching the train station from, because we get some pretty amazing responses in the chat when I ask that question. So, but if this is your first time on the train station, you can just drop a new in the chat. What we normally do is I'll talk to you guys a little bit. I'll talk about whatever the topic is of the day, and then I'll jump into some questions, and I'll see how much I can tackle here. It's a little bit harder with just one of me here. Hippie Shake isn't very good at using the mouse or the keypad yet, but we're working on it. So let's see. I see Calgary, Brazil, Georgia, Tacoma, Washington, Northern Michigan, Texas, Pennsylvania. Wow, very, very cool. I love seeing that, and I find it so fascinating how many different places that we get to talk to you guys from. It's really, really cool to see where everyone is watching from. So before I jump into some of, actually, you know what? Let's see if we've got any question of the week stuff going on yet. This will be a little harder. I don't have any, as I look through the chat, I won't have any, I won't be able to talk at the same time. Okay, now I'm going to ask, I know we have two moderators in the chat today. If there's questions that come up, guys, can you either maybe answer them or, give me a heads up with an at McCann Dogs, at McCann Dog Training, just so I can track them down. It'll be a little bit easier. But wow, look at it's amazing. You guys are coming in from all over the world. It's very, very cool. That's awesome to see. So let's talk about some specific skills that you can do tomorrow with your dog. You can do it for over the next few weeks as the seasons change, some specific things that you can do with them. And one that I always encourage, it's such an important one. And this is something we often accidentally work away or lessen our dog's response to their response to name, and we do it inadvertently. We don't realize that we're using their name so much, but the response to name is such a great skill for your dog to have, especially when they're in a new environment, when you're working at the park for the first time, when you're training at the maybe at the the grocery store where there's lots of distractions whizzing by. Using your dog's name as an intention getter, not just here, Hippie, jump up, Hippie this way, Hippie over here, Hippie don't pull. I would use her name and each time you saw her, I don't know if you can see her, but her head sort of snapped up. Each time I use her name, I want it to be a real attention getter, and I want it to carry the same weight. So be really self-conscious of how much you're using your dog's name, but in the description below and in the cards above, one of these sides, I always forget which side it is, and I think it's flipped, whatever it is. I've linked a video that you can work on your response to name, because that's going to be such a great thing to work on with your dog in these new environments as the snow melts. Maybe you are in the southern hemisphere and maybe it's starting to get colder. I see Christopher Svensson. I apologize if I mispronounced your names, from Norway. He's probably going to have very different climate conditions right now, but there will be that transitional phase when you go from the desolate seeming white, snowy, environment, park. Maybe it's your backyard. Maybe you live on a farm, wherever it is. Things will change. So you want to be working on some of these skills, like your response to name. I would do a couple of them. I would, for 100%, either have my long line on or have a leash on, and I'd work on that response to name. I would probably do this first. This would be the first exercise that I'd work on. I'd have some great rewards, whether it's a treat, maybe it's a tug toy, something really great that's motivating for your dog, because imagine how distracting all of these new smells are, all of these new sights are. All of the animals, the squirrels, the bunnies, the birds, these are things that if you have a puppy, it's maybe their first time seeing them, or if you have a young dog in training, maybe they, got to experience some of the fall, but there's going to be new distractions out there for them at this time of year. So I see a couple good questions coming in. Okay. Let's see here. So I'll just, rather than using the cue cards or the cue for the show, so Dan Luton, raining so much here this winter, it's been difficult to housebreak our puppy to go outside. Any suggestions on transition to moving from inside pee pads to outside? For sure. We have tons of potty training videos that'll be really helpful for you. Maybe Dan can link to a playlist or one of those videos, because once you get in those videos, transitioning by moving the pee pads closer and closer to the door is going to be really, really helpful for you. And eventually, when your puppies reach the point where they really understand that the pee pad is at the door, you can put it outside. You can set it outside, show them where it is, they can use it. So that'll be a great way to transition through. Let's see where we are. So that response to name, first off, that's one of the really important exercises I want you to do with your dog when you first get out to that new environment. Let's see what else we've got. So Carla Martinez, I found that sitting outside for hours at a time at different times of the day and treating for any sort of eye contact from my pup really helps. I love where your head is at, Carla, and this is something that I am definitely going to get to. It's actually one of the cards that are above. It's also in the description below. It's going to be super helpful in knowing that, really getting some attention from your dog and rewarding them and making it a gratifying experience for them to check in with you is going to be really, really helpful. Remember, dogs will do what they find rewarding. They'll do whatever it is that they find gratifying. And when you're working in some of these new environments, when you're working in some of these places where your dog thinks like, oh, that's an interesting thing. I wonder if there'll be any satisfaction from going and, sniffing that spot, or will there be any gratification from catching up to that kid on a bike? But you have continuously rehearsed and reinforced how valuable it is by food, by play, whatever it is to check in with you. It's an easier choice to make for them. They know that it is gratifying. It is rewarding to check in with you, to come back to you. So they're less likely, even at this stage, to make those choices. Again, use that long line, use that leash when you're working through these, because it's going to be really, really important. If they do make the wrong choice, you need to be able to follow up. I'm just going to take a drink here because I'm talking a lot. I never talk this much. So, what other questions do we have coming in? Okay, I saw, there's a couple good questions here. Let me just catch up to the chat a little bit. Saw a question about raining. Yeah, so I know this is Dan sharing it, but so raining so much here this winter, it's been difficult to housebreak our puppy to go outside. And actually, sorry, that was one of the earlier ones. Let me find it here. I saw Dan posted one. Oh, there it is. So, Lisa Johnson says, with the weather changing, I'll be able to walk my 9-month-old doodle. Are there guidelines for the length of time and distance to walk a young dog? Now, at 9 months old, you should be able to get away with, short walks at this point. The definitive answer is going to come from somebody like your veterinarian who can really I wouldn't be as concerned about a walk. I might be concerned about really physical activity like jumping, that kind of thing. I would wait till after a year before I was doing anything that like with abrupt stops with like some of the sport dogs. You need to make sure those epiphyseal plates are closed, and your vet can maybe give you a little bit more guidance than I could sitting here in the train station. But it's a good question, and a lot of people will get out there really early to walk their really young dogs, and it can be a little bit too much for them. So be really, really aware if your pup starts to seem tired or they've had enough, then be really conscious of that so you don't so nobody gets hurt. Okay, let's see what else we've got in the comments here. Okay, I see lots of good questions coming in. I want to get to the next one because I think it's so important. And if you've got limited time, I don't want you to miss out here. But stationary exercises, we talk about it a lot. It is such an important thing to do with your dog. So many people overlook the value of teaching the stay and teaching the wait. And to be honest, it has nothing to do with the dog being able to sit in one position as a functional skill. It's really handy that I can ask Hippie Shake, hi buddy, Hippie Shake to wait. I'm going to pick her up. She's looking adorable down here. It looks like she can't wait to get up and see you guys. I'll go around there. It's really helpful that I can ask her to wait or I can ask her to stay in one position when we're out somewhere. If I drop something on the floor and I need her to remain in position for her safety. But I will tell you that the impact on your dog, the opportunity to work in some self-control when your dog's making the great choice to remain in position, even though some of these new tough distractions might go by. Maybe it's a kid on a bike. Maybe it's other dogs that are going out for a walk. You're going to see a lot more people and dogs out likely when you're out with your dog as the seasons are changing. The opportunity to reinforce and reward them for making the great choice, for having composure, for having some self-control is such a powerful thing. And it's, like I said, it's not dependent. It's not all about the fact that they will remain in position. It has this overarching sort of value to it that will help all of your other skills, especially when we're talking about these situations where there are all sorts of new distractions. And these new distractions, the great part about stationary skills, and I'll tell you a couple things that I really like about them. I feel like right now I'm wearing one ear muff. Like my right ear is so warm right now that I might need to take hippie shakedown because it feels rather strange. Up, buddy? I gotcha. Okay. So the opportunity to do stationary exercises really close to those tough distractions because you have so much control, because they only require a little bit of space. You can go pretty darn close to that soccer game. You can go pretty close to the outside of that dog park. And remember, we never talk about I strongly suggest you avoid using a dog park unless it's completely empty. But you can get pretty close to these places, these busy environments, and work a weight. And it's such a powerful skill. And you get to reinforce your dog for making the choice that you want them to make. They get to learn that listening to you is really valuable. The really important thing, if your dog decides that that distraction is too tough, that maybe you've sort of pushed the limits. I don't know whether you saw last week's video. We talked about, actually this Monday's video, we talked about transitioning the gentle leader on and off. And you might reach a point, there's a threshold where your dog is, they might go, maybe they'll stay, maybe they'll listen, maybe they'll go. As you get to those points, if you pass that, no big deal. Take a big step back and work through your exercises. But what's really important, especially when we're talking about these stationary exercises, you replace them back in position. If they've broken their weight, if they've broken their stay, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to take them by that leash or long line and just replace them, show them exactly where you wanted them to be. And then a few minutes later, a few seconds later, you can reward them for being there. So it gives them the sense, especially when you're using something like a long line, that's why I love the long line so much, that you have some sort of superpowers, that even though they've decided that right now I don't really want to listen to you, that you have the opportunity to reel them in on leash, reel them in on their long line, and replace them back in position. Super duper helpful. So this is a good question. So I see Katie C has asked, with more and more people getting out, how do you deal with sudden distractions when working outside? I try to be so connected with my pup that I tend to miss people until they're right next to us. I love this because you're thinking ahead. You're sort of thinking outside the box, Katie. And this is exactly why you want to have that leash or long line on, so that even if something that is completely unpredictable or, it surprises you, you can still follow through and show your pup how to be right. If you're working on loose leash walking, you can simply turn them away and go response to name. Same thing. You have that leash or long line on. It's a great question. And it's something that oftentimes for some of these unpredictable events, will suggest that you set it up. So for example, maybe you knocking at the door is a great example. So if someone knocks on your door and people say, well, I never know when someone's going to knock on my door, well, you can set that up. You can do the same with a lot of these circumstances. You can get your spouse, you can get a family member or the neighbor, somebody to do that same walking by, not make a lot of noise and just all of a sudden appear at your training space. But you have your leash or your long line on, and that's why I think it's so important, so that you can train through it. Excuse me. Let's see what other questions we've got. So talking about stationary exercises, super powerful. Don't underestimate the power of those exercises, guys. I can't tell you how important they are. Attention exercises. Now, was it Kayla? I forget who mentioned that earlier. Darn, I've lost it. I forget. Someone had mentioned earlier attention exercises. They're amazing. They're so helpful. They're a great way to reinforce your dog for looking at you, looking to you for information, like physically looking at you, at your face. It allows you to overcome some distractions. If they're more interested in seeing what you're asking of them next, they're a lot less likely to just get distracted by a leaf blowing by or by maybe the scent of a bunny track or something like that. It's really helpful. I'm just going to find, I'm not sure where, oh, Hippie Shake is just sitting here patiently. Okay, you can go play. You can go. Hippie Shake was just sitting behind me. I wasn't sure where she had gone, and I was wondering. So these attention exercises, again, I'm pretty sure I put a card above and probably a link in the description below, but using those attention exercises can be really great. And I'll tell you, this sort of ties in with our stationary exercises. Something I want you to do at home. When you're working on your stay, when you're working on your weight, any of these stationary, even a sit. I mean, even if you're working on it, you have a really great sit and you're rewarding your dog. Start to reward them from your face. Start to rehearse that them being rewarded in a direct line between their eyes and your eyes is really valuable. And you're going to find quickly moving into, you'll find very quickly that moving into this position of reward generates that look, generates like them checking into you and looking to you for attention. So by rehearsing that direct reward path, you'll start to get your dog randomly checking in. And when they do, especially when you're outside, for example, in a busy place, yes, take that treat out and be sure that rather than rewarding from your bait pouch down here, you're rewarding from your nose right here. Now, make no mistake about it. They do see the food, but what we're doing is we're sort of building in this pattern of being rewarded from your face, that this direct line from your eyes to theirs is a really, really important place to look. So, your dog's automatically going to check in with you more often. That's just something that you will see start to happen. And it's something that I was so envious of. When I was a student, I clearly remember it. And lesson one at our training facility, when we have all of the grade 1 students come out for their first lesson, I was so impressed at how many dogs would check in with their owner just randomly, whether they were sitting or walking and not, staring at them intently. Some would, but those dogs that, as another dog would run by, they would check in with their handler or check in with their owner and be like, okay, what do you want me to do now? It was so cool. I was so envious of that. And it was something that I thought they just had genius dogs. I thought they were just these amazing dogs that would always want to do what was right. But I learned very quickly, and you can learn it too by rehearsing these things, that it's a trained skill. Dogs don't just come magically, that they're always looking to you. Some do more often, but capture those moments and reward them. So really, really powerful. And Kayla, I think, was way ahead of it. Pretty sure that's who mentioned it. Way ahead of the curve there. Attention exercises, a great one. So let's jump into the chat. The chat is getting even busier and see what you guys have to say out there. So if you have questions about what you're doing, let's see, I'm not sure what layer I put this on. So with the seasons changing, have you noticed a difference in your dog's listening skills? This is, like I said at the top of the show, if you're just jumping in, these changing conditions can really present some new challenges for your dogs, especially if you've got a puppy who may have never seen the springtime, or if you're in the southern hemisphere, I guess it would be the fall as you transition into fall. So what do we have? Okay, I see Mary says, our mini Aussie pup is spot on with commands indoors, but not at all outdoors with people and other pets. Mary, you've come to the right train station, because this is exactly what I'm talking about. So these exercises that you're doing with your dog indoors, you've probably done an amazing job working through whatever distractions might be in the house. Maybe it's family. Maybe it is the kitchen countertop. I mean, whatever it is for your dog. You do need to find these transitional places. So when you go out in the yard, let's say, I don't remember outdoors. So when you go out in the yard, you can do those exact same exercises, but be sure that you follow through the same way that you did indoors. So if your pup gets up and moves, you're just going to replace them back in position. If they stop listening, you're going to have that leash or long line on to guide them back around and work on your response to name, to work on your recall. But you have that safety line, that long line or that leash on so that you can show them how to be right. The worst thing that we can do is expect too much of our dogs. We can, think that because they're great indoors, that they should just listen outside. But again, if you weren't here at the top of the show, Mary, I did talk about dogs don't make these same kind of generalizations, and it's really important that we work through the same exercises in a bunch of different places. This is no different when it comes to changing seasons. It's no different when you go to the lake. If you go down to like somewhere that's new, maybe it's, different sounds, sights, smells. Your dog finds all of these things very interesting. So you want to work on these exact same skills with them with people around. Don't make it too hard at first. You want maybe people at a distance or maybe behind a fence or something. But whatever you do, use that long line to make sure that your dog doesn't have an opportunity to go do some self-rewarding behavior, like jump up on someone, like, chase your other dog around in a circle, because that's really gratifying. That's really rewarding for them to do that kind of thing. So you need to have that line on so that you can have an opportunity to. I see Kale's made a point. You should anticipate your dog being more distracted when the seasons change. Yeah, it'll prevent. You can prevent these issues from happening, and that's really what we're getting down to when we talk about these changes of environments. Season changing is not that different. There are some different challenges when you have a puppy who's never seen spring, because one thing I want you to be aware of, especially if you've got a winter puppy, you don't know what that response is going to be from them. Maybe they're kind of worried about the sound of a skateboard. You need to be conscious of that. Maybe they're, really excited about cars driving by. You need to be very aware of these things so that you can help them to be right, but you just don't know what that response is going to be. But you should expect that they will have some response, that they will see this thing as either exciting or whatever. And you need to prepare for it. It's really, really important. I see Kale, bring out the great rewards when you're doing the first couple of training sessions outside, especially during winter and spring. So that is a great point. And when I started the show, I talked about the response to name. And some people will send us messages, comment on the channel and say, my dog just doesn't love treats. I can't figure out why they don't really like treats. And that may be the case. I would suggest that you make sure you're meal feeding your dog, but also figure out what they love. Like, is there one thing that they really love? If not, then do they love to play with toys? Can you play tug with them? Something like response to name, or something like the recall, which we're going to talk about next. A great ending to those is playing tug with your dog. It does a couple things. It gets your dog to understand that tons of value comes from engaging with you, but it's also really exciting. And some of the dogs get so stimulated and excited and rewarded by the action or the act of tugging, that it's a great ending for some of these in motion exercises. So figure out what your dog loves. And in these extra challenging times, whether it's environmental change, whether it's something that they find really distracting. Mary mentioned people and pets. Find something that they love. And I think it's easier to use food in a lot of cases because you have a lot more control. It actually innervates a different part of their brain as well. However, sometimes having that toy, that surprise toy reward, can be so valuable. And use your voice. Using your voice to support your dog. Using your voice to praise and reward your dog. Such a helpful thing. And it's something that, as a dog trainer, I'm often suggesting to people, and maybe you're doing it at home too. If you think to yourself, okay, when I'm in the middle of this exercise, maybe it's response to name, maybe I've called my dog's name and they've turned, what am I doing until they get to me, until they get that reward? Using your voice can be a great way to bridge that gap, to maintain some attention from them, and to motivate them. Motion, use your motion on those exercises. You really find the things that your dogs love. And ultimately you'll be able to do more with them that way when you really know what they've they will work for, you'll be able to go to more distracting environments. You'll be able to go to tougher distractions and work through those things because you really understand your dog. When we talk about relationship, it's sort of an abstract thing, but that's what I mean when we talk about relationship, that you have a real deep understanding of what your dog loves, what their capabilities are, and that they want to listen to you because of that. Okay, so let's see where we are. I'm getting terribly... I can still whistle, luckily. Okay. Jordan Davis says, great question, Katie. I'm adopting an adult dog soon, and I'm wondering how much I have control over at this point with how he sees distractions in dogs. Really great question, Jordan. So you're going to treat your older dog the same way you treat a puppy. I want you to think about like simple things like, hopefully potty training isn't an issue for you, but using your crate for your new dog is going to be really powerful. And it's something that when we brought Mac home, 9-year-old border collie, we introduced him to our other dogs the exact same way that we would a 8-week-old puppy. We're going to really control his experience, and you're going to control your older dog's experience so that they understand that working with you is the greatest thing in the world. Something like using your crate gives you a great opportunity to manage your new dog. Every time that dog comes out of the crate, it's party time with you. It's nothing but good things that are coming from you, and that will expedite your training. That will, set you up so that your dog's more likely to listen when you do encounter some of these new distractions. You don't know how he or she will see the distractions. You don't know what challenges you might have. Maybe he pulls like crazy on leash when you go for a walk. Maybe he stares adoringly at you, but he doesn't respond to name very well. These are the things that you just have to be prepared for. But if you set them up to be successful by good management and lots of fun training, same way that you'd work with a puppy, same way, and sort of what took me down this path was thinking, we often get the question about introducing an older dog to, the other dogs in a household. You do it the exact same way. You make sure that they have some space, that everybody gets individual time before you just let the party happen, and they get to be gratified by running around with your other dogs. So keep that in mind. Really, really good question. What else can I find here on the questions? So I don't know whether some of these questions may have been asked already, which makes it a little tougher too. So do you have a dog who you've noticed isn't listening as well? And again, I mentioned at the top of the show that I've noticed this in my friends of mine who I was with yesterday mentioned that they just don't get the snappy response. And I said, well, where are you guys going? And they said, well, it's the park. And I'd driven by the park when I arrived at their place, and I noticed how much grass had been exposed, and actually how many people were out there, probably because it wasn't an icy mess. But that will happen. That will happen as the environment changes. Even for those dogs who have a foundation of great responses, sometimes these new smells or the reminder that, oh, right, I forgot that the bunnies usually go through here, or that, oh, this is great, I forgot all the kids play soccer over there. So go back to square one before you give them an opportunity to make those bad choices. Or if you have a slow turn on your recall, if you have a slow turn on your response to name, if your dog won't sit and wait, go back, take a step back in your training and really reinforce that you're a great leader, that you can show them how to be right, that you can have some success and be able to reward them for it. Don't just think, well, I don't know, he learned it last year, I don't know why he's not doing it now. Just take stock of it. If you can't fix it right there, make note of it so that you can come back to it. It's really important. It's really important learning for your dog, because as I mentioned earlier, dogs will do what's rewarding. So if they have even one or two experiences where they chase after a tennis ball at the park, and they chase another dog and they have a wild, fun time, and you're calling and they're not coming back, well, that was a pretty gratifying experience. So you need to train through it. You need to train that response to name. You need to train that recall. So when we're talking about your recall, it's a life-saving exercise. It's something we get calls at our office all the time. How people can't believe that their dog is in week 6 and they got out the door, or they ran out the gate and they called and they said, come. The dog turned around and ran right back. It's the kind of thing that can save your dog's life. It's also, especially at this time of year, even when it's in where we are, it's like really mucky and like muddy and gross. It's something that you can do that will wear your dog out so fast because it's fun, and there's lots of motion, and you're running, and maybe you finish with a tug, or maybe you finish with a nice sit in front with lots of rewards. But I would argue that it's much better than a walk. If you do 5, 6 recalls using your long line at the end of 20 feet, find a decent distraction. Maybe your dog's sniffing the grass, and you work on your recall from 20 feet away, and they come flying in, they get to sit in front of you. You're exercising them physically, but you're exercising them mentally as well, and that can be such a helpful thing. I just love... I'm not a huge fan to personally, and this is totally my personal thing, but I don't love going for walks with the dogs. What I love is like playing fetch. I love working on something like the recall, calling them. We're really lucky at the training facility. It's 22 acres. So, we can call them from a long way away on the dogs that we know, have a 100% reliable recall, but we can literally let them go out and, go for a bit of a wander and then call come. And that energy that that they're using up as they're running back to you is better than any walk I could ever imagine. It's also fun with our young dogs. We'll take them out. You spend 5, 6, maybe 10 minutes doing recalls, that puppy's tired. That young dog is really, really tired out. So super short sessions, really fast, energy. It's fun for you. It's fun for them. There's lots of motion. Daryl Bambick explained the recall. So the recall is your come command. Sorry. I know I should use more regular terminology. When you say come, as you've trained your dog, we have a few videos on the channel. I may have posted a playlist in the card above. I think I probably would have, but that's your recall. So, or your come command. So when you say that word, whether it's come or whatever your recall word ends up being, your dog comes flying in, and then they sit and stare up at you in complete control, and then you can reward them lots of times. But some of those videos will really help you understand. I think I talked about a few different aspects of the recall. They'll really help you understand why, how you can train it with your dog. Really finding something valuable. Okay, Dixie Snowden asks a question, and Dixie, this is a question that we get quite often. Can you stop a dog from chasing cars? Absolutely. And I've told this story, and maybe if you've been in the train station a few times, you've heard this story before. But you can definitely stop a dog from chasing cars. You need to train it. You need to work on it. You need to go near somewhere where they like to chase the cars, and you can teach them something like an incompatible behavior. Teach them something like a leave it. Those interrupting that thought pattern for them is so much more effective than waiting until they decide that thing is worth chasing and start on their way to go chase it. So using your leave it in that example, asking your dog to sit or lie down. And the funny story that I love to tell is that we had the border collie that loved to chase cars. Anytime a car would come, I think it was Kale's mom, she'd say down. So Purple would just lie down because she loved to chase cars. So Deb taught Purple to lie down every time a car would go by. Well, after a while, Purple was so accustomed to that, hearing that became her cue. A car, sometimes you wouldn't even hear the car. The car would be like quite a ways away. She'd see it or hear it, and then she'd just lie down. So Deb actually trained her to have that incompatible behavior, and it was a pretty remarkable thing to see. So just put a little bit of work effort into it, long line or leash. Teach your leave it, teach your, that incompatible behavior, sit, lie down, whatever, but make sure that you're really safe about that one, because that can, if you allow your dog to chase those cars, it's really gratifying for them. And I would hate for your dog to get in a situation where they could get hurt. Something else we don't use it a lot. And I don't know if I've got a video on the channel for this, but something that I would definitely like to talk about. We teach this in our advanced grades. I think we start in grade 2. We teach a random stop. So this, and actually, if you were one of our previous train station episodes, we talked about a situation where we're out for a walk with all the dogs, and we heard like a four-wheeler, like an ATV, coming down the trail, and we asked all our dogs to lie down, and everybody just plopped their bellies on the ground. Gave us an opportunity to ask them to wait, and we clipped on leashes, and then the four-wheelers went by, and then we clipped everybody off, took everybody back off their leashes, and away we went. But having that random stop can be such a powerful thing, especially if you're in this wide open space and I forget who asked it now, but some unforeseen thing happens. Maybe maybe the kids maybe you're at the baseball park, kid hits the ball over the fence or something like that. You can ask your dog to down. You can ask your dog to even wait. And I know we teach wait on the channel, but having that response when they're in motion is so helpful. It really speaks to those stationary exercises. And when you get to a point where you're working on your stay and you're working on your weight, building in that emotional control, you're going to be much more successful with something like a random stop. It's such a powerful thing, but so work on that with your dog. And it's an easy way to do it is as you're walking along, if you have a dog that doesn't pull on leash and is being really great, you just ask them to sit and you keep moving. And see if you can get your dog to sit as you move away. That's sort of it's kind of an advanced technique, but it's about as good as I could do for a quick explanation on YouTube. But it's something that I love to teach the dogs, and it's something that we found to be really, really helpful. Now, something that you may not think about, but I can tell you there's so many reasons why you want to do it with your dog in these new environments, with these like crazy, exciting, stimulating environments. Trick training. It sounds, at first you might think, why would that be helpful at all? Well, I'll tell you. Here we go. It makes listening fun. It makes your dog want to work for you. It makes them, it's a more exciting, stimulating thing than all of that other stuff that's going on, because now they're working for reward. And maybe it could be something really simple, or maybe you're capturing behaviors. Maybe I'll tell you the story. When I was training Deegan, I know if you've been on the train station before, you may have heard me talk about Deegan, my black lab. And, she was a wild and crazy dog, and my vet said that I should go to McCann dog trainers. So I did, and long story short, now I'm sitting in front of you with a blue shirt on, hosting a show called The Train Station. But one thing that I did with Deegan that was really helpful to build some work drive in, because she didn't naturally want to listen because I'd given her so much bad information before I became a dog trainer, which is ultimately, on a bit of an aside, these are the things that I wish I knew. That's what goes on the YouTube channel. All the stuff that I wish I'd done with Deegan, or the things that I see people do that are with their young dogs. These are the things we talk about here on the show. But, I'm just going to close this. So, what I did with Deegan is she loved to go to the park. We go inside the baseball diamond, and because it had gates, and I knew enough to not give her an opportunity to be off leash when I didn't have 100% reliability from her. But she also loved to jump. The birds would come and land on the top of the fence, and she loved to like jump up and just sort of sniff around and see where the birds were just after they'd fly away. So I actually captured that behavior, and I taught her to, I think I said, stick them up or something like that. And then she would go and she would run and stand up on two legs and just lean on the fence. It was so great. But doing things like that with her really sped up some of the more intentional learning that she did. The thing that's great about trick training is you can go about it a few different ways, but a really great way to teach your dog to problem solve is by doing shaping. And we have lots of videos that talk about shaping on the channel. But using shaping for your dog to do some problem solving where it causes a little bit of effort, there's a little friction there, but it's a really positive friction because they are rewarded when they're right. They'll offer behaviors, and doing that in these new environments really solidifies the desire to be listening to you, the desire to be working for you. So using trick training when you're in, and it's also really fun. Maybe the great big rock, out in whatever the open space is now exposed, and now you can teach your dog to go put their back feet up on the rock. It's a great learning opportunity for your dog. It's a great opportunity to work with them and build value, build leadership that, it's worth. If they do something, if they put in a little bit of effort, then they'll be rewarded, but it's with you. I can't say enough about trick training, especially in these circumstances. When your dog now has to choose to listen to you, to offer behaviors, to work when there's all these other things going on, it's really it's such a powerful thing. So I'm going to jump back in. I don't have too much voice left, but let me know if you're enjoying this episode of the Train Station. I just take every opportunity I can to toot the train whistle. It's hard. It's a lot harder here without Kale in the show, because I don't have a chance to check in with your comments in real time. But if you're starting to notice that your dog is a little bit slower, it isn't listening the same way that they once did, it might be the changing seasons. And some of the exercises that we talked about in today's show can really turn that around, especially do a couple of them at a time. And again, always have that leash or long line on. I see Dan, the man, our moderator, killing it as one-man show. Well, thank you, Dan. I do appreciate that. It's a challenge. There's lots of bells and whistles. There's a lot going on here. There's things happening. I see lots of comments coming in. So it's hard to keep it all organized, but we're trying to see what else. What other questions have you guys asked here? I see Kale and Dan have been answering these things, answering lots of these great questions. Kale's often talking about bringing out really great rewards, and it is really important. And I want to thank both Dan, our moderator man, and Kale for jumping in and taking these questions. I see they have been busy in the chat, and without you guys, I think I don't know if everyone would have had as much fun in this episode. It's hard. I'm just going to have a look at, see if anything was missed, see if there's anything that I can answer. So let me know, do you have any outstanding questions, or is there anything you're thinking about when it comes to your dog's listening in these new environments? Do you have a puppy? Is this going to be your puppy's first spring? If so, you are for sure going to want to follow these tips, because it's going to be a totally brand new experience for that puppy. Let's see what we've got here in the chat. Yeah, I saw, I'm not sure whether this has been answered. How do I get a dog to relax more? There's a lot of different ways. We do have a video on the channel that teaches your dog to go and relax on their bed. Giving them an opportunity, sending them to do a little bit of work, whether it's lying on a bed, going and putting them in their crate if they're just incessantly trying to get you to play. Having them go in their crate can start to instill a bit of an off switch. So same thing with the go lie on your bed. It's so nice. So often we want the dogs to be with us and hanging out with us, but once in a while it's really nice to just have them go and chew on a bone on their bed, or have them go hang out in their crate and they can, have a snooze or whatever. You do need those times, as an actual person to just not have to worry about what they're doing. So that's a great way to do it. Use your crate, use a bed. We actually have a settle and sit video on the channel. It might be hard to find. I don't remember how we titled it. But those things you'll find really helpful for installing that sort of off switch that some dogs come with. Some dogs, they just naturally seem to have this work drive and then they can shut it down. Other dogs, they need to be shown. They need to be taught how to just take their foot off the gas once in a while. Okay. See some new questions coming in. Okay. B. Adams says, it's deck season and lots of dogs walking by. First season for my dog, 10 months old. She's pretty vocal as they walk by. Any suggestions curbing this? Now, I can't, I'm not totally sure what that what the setup is. One thing I'll for sure tell you is if your dog is outside, like on the deck, maybe just like hanging out on the deck, and barking at people as they walk by, you need to eliminate that opportunity for her to make a mistake. Yeah, she eliminate that opportunity for her to make a mistake. But if you're out there, you can use things, like redirect, leave it. You can use all these things. But whatever you do, don't just put her on the deck and have to come out every time she starts barking. So you spend some time out there with her. Work on things like your leave it. Excuse me. Work on things like your leave it, but don't let her rehearse. Barking's a really self-gratifying behavior. So she thinks it's the greatest thing when she gets to bark as people are walking by. It just feels good. She just loves to do it. So you can't let her rehearse it. So either be out there with her and supervise her so that you can give her the right information that it's not okay to bark out there. Or have her in at that point in time, at least until she gets more relaxed about people walking by. The other thing you can do is, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but have set it up. So if you have like a walking path, a friend of mine has a walking path right beside his house. It's where the kids go to school, and he has she's an older dog now, but it's something that he struggled with at first. You might find that something as simple as putting up a visual stop so that your dog can't see those people for now, if she needs to be out there, is a good way to avoid her barking at those people. What's even better is setting it up, having friends, family, neighbors walk by, and then you can work on stuff with her. You can train her, whether it's maybe you're working on a look at me, maybe it's your leave it. Those kinds of things are going to be really, really helpful. But just make sure that you don't let her rehearse it, because it's something that she's going to want to do anyway. Let's see. Okay. Let's see if I can send this over. Don Poole said, I have 2 puppies that I'm trying to train and getting overwhelmed. Do you have an ideal amount of time each day I should be focusing on training? It's a really great question, Don. And it's, Don Poole. It's a great question. And it's something that if you have 2 puppies, 1 puppy, it's something that you need to really be thinking about it. And especially with 2 puppies, here's what I want you to do. You need to be working with them independently. Don't have them both out at the same time when you're working on this stuff. You want them to feel like you have their undivided attention, and you want to have their undivided attention when you're working with them. So cut up a bunch of like training treats the night before, or set aside some training treats, and maybe have 10, 15 training treats in a bunch of different spots, or maybe in a bunch of like different prepared packages, whatever it is. Over the course of the day, take advantage of those little moments in time. Excuse me. Maybe it's in the morning when you make your coffee. Maybe it's at lunchtime. Maybe it's the middle of the afternoon after you've just got home, whatever it is. Break your training sessions up into several training sessions over the course of the day, but keep them short and really sweet. So make it really gratifying for your puppies to be working for 10 treats. That's it. And then they go back into their kennel, or they go back into their crate, and do that with each dog. But really make it all about the quality of the training. It's all about the quality of the time rather than the quantity of the time. So if you're really working hard at teaching your puppy, whatever, their name, or you're teaching your puppy to walk on a loose leash, focus, really invest your time, because they're worth it. It's worth your time to really be specific about the information that you're giving them for that short amount of time. And then they can go back in their kennel, or they can go back in their crate until they're ready for the next training session. So I love that question. And I think it's really, really a good question. A lot of people have it. Let's see. Daryl and Luna, train station regulars. When we walk with Luna, we pass a bush that has birds in it, and she gets low and walks slow as we approach it. Any suggestions? For sure, I would find that. Try to find a distance that she isn't thinking about that noisy spot. Make sure that you're not. Something that people will often do if they get some sort of response from their dog that they immediately think is that they're worried, or that the dog is a little bit stressed, they'll right away, it's okay. It's just what we want to coddle. Everything's fine. It's okay. Don't worry. There's no birds there. There's nothing to be afraid of. Sometimes that language, even the tone of the voice, can really build a positive feedback cycle for that dog, so that even if they weren't too concerned, they know that every time they start to feel this way, they're going to hear this language. So just be really supportive. I might even, so what I do sort of as I'm thinking of working through a situation like this for Daryl, is I might just turn the other way and walk at the same pace that I was moving at before. I might come back and then turn around, walk the same pace we were going. And then I might try to get as far away as I can, but don't react to the thing that you think Luna might be afraid of. Don't allow her to rehearse that behavior. But you're going to be supportive throughout. All right, good way to go, buddy. Really, positive language, really like reaffirming for her that everything is fine and we're going to work through this. You can also use things like reward. So I might reward her before she gets to that state. If you know, if there's like a line, or if there's like a point where you know she's going to all of a sudden be worried, make sure you get lots of rewards in before that point, and then try to help her through the rest of it. Keep moving at the same pace. Be really sure that because there's nothing to be afraid of. Be really sure and let her know that sort of emotion transfers right down the leash. Whew. Well, this has been something else. I want to thank you guys for joining me here on the show. I've almost talked, I don't think in my entire life I've ever talked for an hour. You can ask Kale. I don't know whether she's still in the chat here, but man, oh man, this was a lot. I want to thank Hippie Shake for being an excellent little demo dog, I guess, for today. She didn't do much demonstration, but I appreciate her supporting me throughout this lone stream, which is not a thing, but I'm just going to call it that. But most of all, I want to thank you for joining me here at the train station. Now, if this is your first time on the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We publish new videos every single week to help you to have a well-behaved four-legged family member. I want to thank my moderators, Dan, Luton, just knocking it out of the park, helping you guys out with all of those links. And, I really, really appreciate that. It's so very helpful. And I want to thank Kale for jumping in and answering lots of questions. And on that note, I want to wish you guys very, very happy training. And I'll see you on Monday. Bye for now.